There's only been a few riders that have been a three-time winner. Bill Brissman in the late 70s and early 80s is one of them. He also holds the distinction of being one of the few people that is both a podium finisher in the Lil Five and played a part in the finish of the movie Breaking Away. Tonight on Fitfoot U, we're going to be talking with Bill Brissman. He's going to share some stories coming up next. Well, it's funny watching that scene again. That movie brought me to IU. If you and Eddie had not sort of conspired to make that finish and the whole movie look as real as it was, I don't think I'm sitting here talking to you. This is Dr. Ben Pro with Fitfoot U, and today I have the privilege and really going to get some great stories with the discussion with one of the guys that was a principal for just getting that iconic finish. They're having like Rocky's finish, Breaking Away's finish, and you guys, I don't want to steal your thunder, but welcome, Bill Brissman, Billy B, as Eddie, I guess, liked to nickname you, and he had his own nickname too. So welcome to Fitfoot U and this Little Five edition.
Thank you so much, and I'm honored to talk to you.
Yeah. So tell us about how you guys nailed it. Right from the get-go. How did that come about?
Well, just to start, it wasn't me and Eddie in that final take. It was me and
I know
Gary,
it was
Gary Rybar.
Yeah. No, I was just saying in the broad context that you guys were like real riders, so you brought that authenticity and
and
Eddie
they
in
wanted
previous
that.
I know
for the parts of Rod and Dave, who were great actors, not experienced bike riders, and so they got all these things set up. They had cameras on a motorcycle. They had helicopters in the air. They had all these fans positioned in a certain way to make a few people look like a lot of people in the stands. And this took like hours of setup and probably for 20th Century Fox a lot of money. And we're in the tent in the infield, and Peter Yates just looked at me and he pointed at me and he said, "Don't win," in his British accent. And after that, he just kind of left it up to us. Gary and I talked about it, and I said, why don't I lead it out and let you come under me? And he said, great. We did it that way, and just
were you guys pretty much hammering it pretty hard? I mean, like close to.
Yeah, we were going pretty hard, and believe me, Gary was a stud on the bike. I mean, he didn't need much help to come around me, and so I just went hard and just made sure that I didn't win.
Yeah,
and Peter loved it, and that was that. We didn't have any more work to do that day.
And you got it in one take.
Yeah. And he was glad about that because of all the pieces that were in motion.
Yeah. Did you stunt double any other stuff or ride double?
No, I was in the mass start of the road race, and beyond that, they wanted to not have my face seen any other times in case there was some confusion or they didn't want me
Oh, so
seeing the
they
movie.
had the frat rat in the road race too, huh? Rod was in
Well,
the, or
no, he wasn't. He
you just
wasn't.
played another guy.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
just a bike rider. I was field fodder in this massive road race.
Okay. As was Randy Strong.
And a cast of hundreds of others.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, man, you know, it was such a well done story and such an authentic, not canny, corny, um, just well done on every aspect that it captured people's imagination. I mean, you talk to people today, many people who aren't familiar with IU don't even know about the movie, and it's a hidden gem. I say you got to go if you like cycling, you got to check this movie out.
Well, it's funny, after graduation, I moved out west and spent almost 40 years in California, and very few people knew of Little 500. But if you said Breaking Away, people said, "Oh, I saw that movie," and it really was a movie that captured not just people in Indiana, but it's one of the holy trinity of Indiana sports movies, along with Hoosiers and Rudy. So it's considered to be a classic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and in the 7 degrees of separation, even me being way after you in '87, not way after, but several years after you, I run into a guy in '87 that was a kid in the movie that was in the big bowling ball brawl. I don't, do you know who I'm talking about?
I don't know. No.
So the safety council leader, Doug Bruce, was a kid in the movie. So he was an extra in the scene where Cyril's swinging around the bowling ball. And
Right. I know the scene. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, so tell me a little bit now about your Little Five writing days. I mean, you're a Hall of Famer. There's a lot to your story, and I don't want to make it unidimensional, but that was a big part of your college experience. We've talked about that, how much that shaped us. You were in the Riding Hall of Fame. I was lucky just to get to do the damn race my senior year for a series of circumstances with teammates prior to that. But
Right.
yeah, but at the end of the day, we talked about what a binding thing it is, and just how you can kind of like look over and talk to somebody, and you know that you basically went through a lot of what they went through, and you went through the same thing.
So many things I could talk about on that question, and thank you. The first thing I want to say is that I didn't do this alone. I was blessed with some really good, smart, dedicated other students that we all kind of together became Little Five riders, and yeah, by the time we got to be sophomores, juniors, seniors, we pretty much self-defined more as Little Five riders than as students, than as Hoosiers, or guys from Chicago, or anything else. We were Little Five riders first, and I always joke with people that I majored in Little 500. I minored, I got a business degree, but
I've
I majored
never
in
heard
Little
that.
500, and
Yeah.
this was something that really got us up in the morning. It motivated us, and more than that, and this is something that is still true today, it gives any student that is willing to put in the work the ability to set a really high bar for themselves and train like a D1 athlete if they want, and have an event that is worthy of all that effort at the end. And I have a buddy of mine that I really reconnected with since I came back to Indiana, but he rode for the Pikes at the same time that I rode Little Five, and this guy was a fantastic athlete. He was his high school quarterback. He was the point guard on his high school team. They won like all the intramural sports with him as the main guy. But and he rode Little Five kind of as a kind of a 3-week effort in April. But he also was actually a quarterback on the IU football team, like third string. But I've talked with him about our training, and he said, "You guys trained way more than the IU football team did." And some would say it may have shown in the results, but nonetheless, Little Five doesn't require a student to be recruited and called on to an IU team. Anybody who's a student in good standing can try for Little Five, and the vast majority of people in the Hall of Fame and who've been winners and who've gotten a lot out of Little Five had no previous cycling experience before coming to IU. Everybody kind of starts more or less, and I'm admittedly perhaps an exception, but the vast majority of riders start out as other athletes looking for an outlet, looking for something to do when they go to school, besides just going to classes and going to parties and maybe playing some video games or something. This is really something meaningful that helped all of my teammates, through the rest of our lives, kind of endure some hardships at different times and work hard and set high goals for ourselves and really work for something. And it's unique to Indiana. There's no other school that really has an event anywhere near comparison of Little 500. So, I think it's just a fantastic event. It shaped my life, and I've made lifelong friends. And I've got nothing but the best things to say for it. And I think all students that come to IU that have any kind of an athletic bent to them should take it on, because you get more out of it than what you put into it, and it's absolutely everything it's cracked up to be.
Absolutely. And what I'll tell you, I was lucky to, my parents didn't come out to watch my race, but my brother did. So he was able to, it's nice to have your family members as well as your college friends attend, and it's still something that he remembers well too. And when I came back here, it's been 21 years since I set foot in Bloomington, and watched the race this year that Jim coached the Cutters to victory. I was pleasantly surprised how much it just felt like I had stepped back into college. I mean, how friendly, how tightly knit that Little 500 community is. And I did notice it 13 years after the race. Every so many years they have these alumni races that they do, and I did one 13 years after 87. I think it was 2001 that I did one. I think it was the 50th running of the Little Five, if I remember correctly. And anyway, it was just a different feeling. It wasn't quite as connected because I wasn't there the whole weekend with lots of alumni, and so many years have gone by since. But especially coming back this time, it really felt, and I had gotten to know a lot of people and had gotten to know Eddie Van Gys better, who wasn't there this year, but just through him got to know people that he knew and reconnect with some of the people that I knew back in the era that when I did it. So it's I think that's the other thing, when as much as I like the community rides I do in the neighborhood, and I play more soccer, and that's kind of more of my church these days is the soccer field, because I'm much more competitive, for my age group playing soccer than I don't put it, the training miles that I did, riding for the Little Five. That the community was never the same as when you're riding little five. It's just
Oh,
it's a
it's
different
true.
level. It's a
It's true that it's a very tight knit community. And something I also want to say is, you know, I've done, you know, I had a great run along with my teammates in Little Five, and I've done some other racing since riding Little Five, and on and off as life permitted. I've done racing, and I was always kind of a fast twitch guy, so I've done mainly criteriums and track racing, and I race track even internationally, and where the UCI bands as a world champion in a couple of events. But I'll tell you this: I wouldn't trade a little 500 victory for the world championships. In the Masters, but it was, you have 20,000, 25,000 at the time. It was standing room only, sold out. All of your peers are there, and there is no bike race at any level here in the United States, and very few even in the world, that get that many paying customers to come and watch a bike race and care about the outcome. And people do, they deeply care about the outcome, and it's way more than an intramural bike race. It's so much more than that, and it means so much more to all the people who put the time into it. And I think that's part of what makes it meaningful. It's also unique in the world in as much as it's the only standard issue bike race that I know of in the world where everybody rides the same bike. It's the only one that I know of that has flat pedals. It's the only one that runs on a basically unbanked oval track with a loose surface. There are so many things about it that make it very different from every other kind of bike racing. And I don't care if you come to IU with other cycling experience, you really have to relearn this event and learn how to be a little 500 rider, even if you consider yourself a bike racer, because it's just got so many nuances, and it's relay. And there are very few cycling relays. I guess there are some in the mountain bike world, but very few that are like this. And the other nice thing about it is it's truly a team race. Yeah, guys ride on teams in the Tour de France, and everyone has their roles and whatnot. But this is something where you've got one guy on your team on the bike at any one given time, and what that one rider does makes the rest of your race hinges on each rider's contribution to the whole effort. So nobody
and tactical
but
decision making processes. We talked before we formalized right here. We in my year we were 26th. I'm just giving an example, and you've got a ton of them. And we ended up drifting up to second and first in the first 3 laps. But then what happened is our most experienced rider, who started it off, decides to drift back, almost like he was testing the pack, playing a little bit around, I won't even say cat and mouse, but just kind of feeling the pack. But he ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it was I believe it was 2 riders that were both from Right Quad, and I think one was from Dodd's House, crossed over pedals, and 12 riders down, and we're one of them. And you're seeing that at like lap 12 or something, and you're like, oh boy.
And you're watching a whole year of preparation
right.
go down the tubes with that one incident.
Yeah. Now you had an incident this year, and I guess I should preface this by saying you like the sport and the experience so much. Now, in I guess semi-retirement, you've come back to coach. So tell us a little bit about that, and then what happened. You had some happenstance things happen this year, but maybe tell us a little bit about what made you pull the trigger on coaching, and how the experience has been so far.
Well, I guess we all many of us anyway, would like to do something for other people while they're and leave the world a better place. Now, some people go and work in a soup kitchen or volunteer at the Humane Society. Something I know is bike racing, and of course, Delta Chi is no longer on campus. And I had a very close association with the Cutters, and still do, for many years. But the Cutters had Jim, they had Jason, they had all these alumni. They had this program and this setup where if
It's a
I
machine. It's a machine.
if
It's a
I joined
well-oiled
on with them,
machine.
I'd be just some guy on the fence
Yeah.
on race day. Maybe I'd go and ride with them or whatever. But when I wanted to do this, I wanted to kind of be more of a have more of an impact on some kids' lives, and maybe layer in another team for competition for among the very top teams. And there are a good number of very worthy teams that train like crazy for this. And I just wanted to get associated with a team and maybe help some kids have a bit of the experience that I did, which I
And by the way, at the same
great.
time, you're bringing up one more team to a more elite level with all your experience. And we didn't even get into your, the fact that your backdrop there is you're a you repair bikes. You kind of told me that you did that like some kid's caddy. You repaired bikes in high school, and it when you had all that extra time when you were a kid where you have oodles of time to learn it, you learned it well, and you know that skill by heart, so you're able to add that to the mix as well.
Yeah, fixing bikes is one more thing that I like to do, but helping these kids is really gratifying. And Alpha Sig is our team. We had a crash on lap 50. One of our riders broke a collarbone. We were right on top of it, but it was at the very worst spot. And as it turns out, we got laps down, and that was all she wrote. So yeah. It was a discouraging day for the guys as far as the race result. But I had a meeting with them just this last week and talked with some of the seniors and some of the new guys coming up, and I asked some of the seniors, there were probably times when you wanted to absolutely quit and you hated this, and they're nodding their heads and in agreement. And I said, okay, well, if you had this to all do over and same outcome, everything else, would you do it again? And it was unanimous. Everyone got a lot out of this. So yeah, race day is an important day, and you're aiming for it. And it's very disappointing if you have an outcome that's less than what you were shooting for. But what I remember from my time riding Little Five, very little about actual race day stuff. Yeah, we had we had a great run on race day, and we had a lot of success. But I remember the training rides and the Florida trips and all these little interactions with these guys over the years that were funny and poignant and sometimes very unpleasant and other times just exhilarating. And that's really what the Little 500 experience is about. Yeah, it's great to win. And one day I hope to help some kids win this bike race. But one way or another, they get out of it what they put into it and more.
Now, you as a coach, you can evaluate because you're now a coach. You've done a couple of these, I guess, a couple races that you've coached, and then as an experienced rider and an international masters rider competitively. What are some of the analogies you've come up with how you would compare them to basketball coaches? You mentioned a couple of the biggies.
We talked about this morning. It's funny, and I just really thought of it for the first time that,
I think
during
it's
our
awesome.
talk, but it's very true. Jim Kirkham is like the Mike Krzyzewski of Little 500. He's had all this success and he's won more than anybody else. But I have to also say that my coaches, Randy and Steve Reisinger, they were like John Wooden. And as you may know, John Wooden won 10 out of 12 NCAA basketball championships all in a row. And so Randy and Steve won 7 out of 9. That's pretty close. So yeah, in terms of total wins, Jim's got it. And then you could say Schwegler is more like Jim Boeheim. He's coached forever and he's had some winners, but Randy and Steve were truly, if John Wooden was the Wizard of Westwood, they were the Wizards of Bloomington.
Well, speaking of wizards, I kind of call Jim Yoda, because the stars seem to align. Somehow the Cutters are one of those teams like Sig Epps this year, and they had some things, and so
they get the
yeah,
details right.
But he's a consummate just very, very organized, and just keeps it super low key. And just, he told me he was sweating some bullets there for a bit when there was a 29-second gap, but he does manage to kind of keep the focus together for the team, and business as usual. So credit to him.
Oh, he does so much right, and that whole program does so much right. And after all, they're my second favorite team now.
But, yeah. Hey man, I gotta throw a wild card at you, because we can't always have the pre-interview questions. I'm going to give you another one. So you've given me three, at least three coaches. How about Courtney Bishop? Who would you put him on the? It doesn't have to be a basketball coach. What's his coaching style?
Well, frankly, I don't know Courtney very well. I met him once this year. I followed what he's done, and and he's had his share of success as well. So I salute him as somebody who stepped up and coached Little 500 teams, and I think he's done a great job. But I don't really know him well enough to be able to say, all right, this is the style, and
he's certainly
just leave it at that.
From what I've talked to him, and just based on breaking the ceiling of having a black team that got into the race, and he's certainly an innovator, and he knows how to rally and get organizations to help out, and he knows how to organize. He's a consummate organizer, I would say, and he's got some interesting chess moves. Now, I don't want you to give away all.
Is he going to be back involved more? Because I know he stepped away from it a couple of years ago. Is he? But
it's my understanding. No, well, I think he was coaching this year. Yeah, I know he was coaching the women's race, and I don't know. You say that some guys are in the pits, but not the lead coach, but they help out. But my understanding is that he's back at the track and going to continue that. Now, I don't want you to give away all your trade secrets, but coaching. But what are some of the things you think that that teams in that particular race make a common mistake with, that they could do something, and you could even go back and compare eras, because one of the things that struck me is the bike exchanges. Obviously, you get the leverage if you got guys that are different heights. You got the seat height optimum, but you're gonna scrub out about 3 seconds there on that, versus the way that you and I did it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had one rider, Greg Silence, who was maybe 6'2", and then we had Al Williams, who was a fantastic rider, who's, I'm thinking 5'9", plus or minus. So, and we were all riding the same bike in the same seat height. So what we did back back then was Al had his shoes built up, so they had another at least inch on the bottom of the shoes. To my knowledge, he was the first to do something like that, and it was quickly noticed by everyone else, and they called them Al's disco shoes. Greg, meanwhile, had the pad in his shorts. He had another pad underneath it that lifted him up, and then they just had to suck it up for the rest of the distance that they were missing. But that did a good job for them. The bike to bike exchanges might cost you 6 seconds, and a single bike exchange might done well might cost you 4 seconds. But one way or another, I think these days, and we were doing this year, we were switching bikes to make sure that we had the correct seat height under the correct rider. But you have a crash, and suddenly the plan gets mixed up a little bit. But we were able to more or less get the bikes in the right place. But yeah, if you have different stem lengths or other things where only one bike fits under a certain rider, and that bike crashes, then you're in trouble.
Now, you're one of the few guys that's ridden both tracks. So you rode the original one where the Arboretum sits today.
Right, the 10th Street Stadium.
The 10th Street Stadium. You told me, I believe, that it was a more narrow track, so that you, I guess you couldn't crank around the turns as fast, right? If it's more narrow, you didn't have that. Go ahead, explain it.
It was a traditional. It was IU's running track from the 1930s, and it was IU's football stadium until Memorial Stadium was built. So it was a traditional quarter-mile track, exactly a quarter mile. What we have now is a little more than that, but it went around a football field, which is narrower than a soccer field. So, and also, while we have banking at the current track, and they put that in because of problems that they encountered at 10th Street on this, but it was an absolutely flat as a soccer field track. So going around these narrower corners at speed, like at qual speeds, race speed didn't happen as much, but if you were riding full gas qual speed, your rear wheel would slip out a little bit, and like 10 times around a corner, the back wheel would slip out. And of course, a new rider, the first thing that they do when the back wheel slips out is they stop pedaling, and that was a recipe for everybody going down the first time they rode the track at speed. But if you kept the gas on, it would bite, it would slip out and it would bite, and it would slip out and it would bite, and it'd actually give you a better angle on the turn than actually you had before the slip. But it was exciting. It made you feel alive. And otherwise, it was traditional cinders, which also carried over to the new track when I was riding it. But today it's a different surface, more like gravel. But yeah, there were a lot of things that were different. There was also a curb. There was like a 4-inch curb on the inside of the track, which took many riders. So you can imagine if you had a curb on the inside where you could not go inside of it, if you touch that curb with either of your wheels, down you go. So it really made riding tight an adventure.
Definitely. Hey, I was just thinking when you said adventure, I think almost all of us got chased by dogs going out to Lake Monroe and making that loop. I remember one that I can't remember if I was going and just rapidly and it hit my chain, or whether the dog actually got my Lycra, but I came back and I had holes in my Lycra. Did you were you ever chased by animals?
Oh yeah, all the time. As a matter of fact, I had a Silka pump that that, and back then these pumps were frame fit, so they were like spring loaded, so you could get them in and out really easily. And Campy made this head for them that was steel, and it had some heft to it. And beyond that, when I was working at a bike shop, I had a frame tube that I cut out of an old Crescent frame, and I had a sleeve over my pump, so I had this quick release club that I had. And of course, dogs chasing bike, and I still have some of it up here, but I had 17 notches in my pump from dogs that I'd hit. And I think dogs chasing bikes in the roads kind of went the way of high dives and other things when lawsuits started getting some bite. But back then, every farmhouse had a dog, and those dogs liked to chase bikes and cars and anything else. And it was dangerous. I know guys that went down, but it became a kind of a sport for me. Maybe I shouldn't tell the story with such glee, but it was truly it was exciting and fun
when you got a big German Shepherd bulldog chasing you, for sure.
Yeah, you give them a needed dose of discipline, and it feels like connecting on a fastball the baseball field. If you get a really good hit, it feels great.
Well, you're a good guy, and I know we won't get Pete on us. I have to bring up something. You told me that somebody stole some movie memorabilia that you had donated, and I hope if they're watching this that it shows up at the front desk of the student union somewhere in an envelope, and it's returned to its rightful place, because that just isn't right.
If anyone sees a Sigma Tau Omega jersey, the purple and yellow that was made only for that race, and there were only 2 made, and one of them was taken back by 20th Century Fox, but I kind of gave it on permanent loan to Foundation, and it disappeared from Foundation House along with one of my other race jerseys. So a little bit so if somebody's got that on their wall, don't be proud of it, because I'm going to hear about it at some time, and I'm going to be coming back and knocking on your door.
You should Bill, you should. Hey, speaking of things that have gone by the wayside, and this is a 2-part question, who did the stand-in for the dive into the quarry for the character that you did the stand-in, Rod?
Yeah, they had somebody from the swimming and diving team do that diving for him.
And of course, you guys had a great. I understand that Doc Councilman, I didn't know this at the time I was there, was a stunt diver way back in the day, like at the circus.
Wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, someone had told me that. Yeah, if you ever have a chance, there's another alum, and I think somewhere there's like life lessons from the Little Five, but Gary Hall Sr., who went to IU in the 70s and was part of that Mark Spitz class, that the Golden Boys that just tore it up in the IU pools. He wrote a book called Winning Life's Gold Medal. And one of the chapters that I thought was interesting in the book was, I'm paraphrasing it, but the Russian judge. And that most of us have in our lives at some point a Russian judge, somebody that going to kind of bend the rules a little bit and get it so that they don't want us to succeed. So, I talked about this before. We all have our motivations. I rushed DU and they told me, the guys, you're a good guy. This guy, Corey was the rush chairman. He said, Ben, you seem like a good guy. I think you'd fit in, but we're really looking for guys that can play intramural basketball or be on the flag football team. And we hadn't even gotten to the discussion a Little Five as a sophomore, but I kind of used that as like that chip on my shoulder. And that just got me, and I'm sure you had your motivations, and, so much of it was fun, but let's face it. I mean, there were times when you're riding out and there's still maybe ice is still on the ground. And if you're trying to kind of like build your character and not just ride the rollers, that you went out to ride in the elements to just get your mental toughness for the race. Because, uh, I'm looking forward to the time when there are more motivated teams, because the top flight of teams I've heard have the great conditioning, just like the people that trained a lot, like back in the eras that we rode. It seems like the back of the pack is not, I don't know if they're doing more of this on the apps, but I think you have to call it what it is. Probably the bottom third of the teams, in past 2010 or 15 are just not quite. There's just not quite as much competition. We would have 75 teams vying for 33 spots. So I don't. It's going to be cool to hopefully have some other coaches like you that get some other teams motivated as well to perform.
Well, there are always going to be the best teams and the worst teams. There's going to be some kind of a bell curve, and whether the middle is wider or taller or whatnot, there are always going to be some teams that say, hey, this is an event worth working for. And this is something that if I do this, I actually have a chance of winning and having some piece of that glory that's associated with it. And I'm gonna do that. And if we have 10 or 15 teams that are doing that every year, this is always going to be an interesting race. And of course, you can be the best trained team for Little 500. And I'm stealing this from Tom Schwegler, who said this, but you only buy yourself the opportunity to win. You aren't going to necessarily win being the strongest team, being the fastest team. Little 500 has its own, demons and angels that pull some of the strings on race day, and you can be a really good team and not have the success you
by happenstance,
and you can also be, a less than the best team and have some luck go your way, but you're not going to be a winner if you haven't put in some threshold of the work that's needed, because it's still an athletic event and it's still hard. But unlike something like a running or a swimming, there's strategy involved, and there is a lot more to bike racing in terms of strategy and drafting and all sorts of things than most other sports. And then Little Five has its own additional layer beyond that throws in a dice cube in the whole mix.
Yeah, well, listen, I think we could end it on that note, but I'm going to end it with a little bit of humor. You've got a lot of funny stories, and I'm going to have you share one that comes to mind. Doesn't have to be with Eddie Bo. It could be with Eddie Bo. It could be with Randy. Any story that you'd like to share that you think people would get a flavor of what it was like training during your days. I know you got a lot of them.
I just one day just and this isn't necessarily funny, but it just, I remember one day we were in Florida, and it was there was a little bit of rain, but that doesn't stop us, and we had some sort of little tiff in the team, and Chris Katowski was mad, and we're out in the middle of nowhere in this flat land in the middle of Florida outside of Gainesville, and he takes off on us, and we're chasing like crazy. And meanwhile, this storm comes in, and there are these little forests all around, and we were hearing trees falling down in the wind. It was blowing that hard that we're like, it's
like a monsoon,
35 degrees, and the the thunder and lightning was coming down, and finally Randy and Steve, had cars, and they gathered us back up, and we actually, that was one of the only rides that we actually bailed out on the whole time, and everything was all right after that. We were suddenly, all those problems went away after we'd all kind of been through this harrowing adventure. And
well, maybe that's one of those things that binds you. You know what I mean? You go through
right.
that experience, and I'm sure they remember that storm well too. with
It's
trees.
like soldiers in a foxhole. They're lifelong friends if they live through it.
That's the one thing that I would say too, is Eddie has said this. When you walked into the stadium and the crowd, it was because of how high it was when they had all those extra stands, especially. It really became this almost like this gladiatorial sort of atmosphere, and you're just so on adrenaline. There's nothing like it. I mean, I think that's why you think about some of the race experience. When you think back, I think everybody still gets goosebumps when they go back. And as much as you can say these road races are really cool, it's just not the same having that.
There's nothing in the United States
feed off
that
the
comes
energy of the
close to it.
crowd. It's like a football
Nothing
game.
in the United States comes close to Little 500 in terms of that fan experience, in terms of that, how it feels with that many people that care about the outcome.
And it was the same for Qualls too, because those were heartbreaking experiences if the exchange wasn't made. You even talked about Delta Chi deciding they wanted to get a pole position and flagging one of their trials, and then not making the race.
In '83, that's what happened. We missed the race after having black flagged an attempt that would have made it in the race. And I wasn't a part of the team then. This was a couple of years after I graduated, but yeah, that can happen. And especially, back when I was riding, there were like 70 teams that were trying to make the 33-man field. So there was a lot of drama with Qualls, and it made a lot of difference. So today it still makes a difference. You get to pick your pits, you get to pick your jersey. There are other things that go with it.
Oh, by the way,
making the race
just for some nostalgia, this is what the 80s. This is such an 80s jacket. The color scheme. It looks like one of those MoMA kind of Modern Museum of New York, but that was the color scheme in the 80s.
Somewhere I've got Bart. We all had, these disco jackets that were our warm-up jackets, and they, by today's standards, they were so hideous, but we loved them. We wore them everywhere.
Yeah. Well, listen, it was so good to hear the stories, have them archived for in perpetuity, but it's good also to also grow a friendship. I think there's enough motivation for me just meeting all these new people both virtually but then also in person, that I think I'm going to be making my way back to Indiana to check out next year's race and watch your coaching efforts, and Jim's and Courtney's if he's in the mix as well.
I look forward to shaking your hand and maybe tipping a beer with you one day.
Oh, we will definitely do that. And I say this to all my guests, if you ever find your way out east in the DC area, it's not quite as genteel as in Indiana, but it's got a lot of good history. Please outreach and we will connect.
Be careful.
Thank you so much for doing this, Bill.
Okay.
Yeah, till next time. Ben. Go ahead. Last word.
I said thank you, Ben, and be careful what you offer to me.
You seem quite generous, so I don't think that'll be a problem. Till next time, this is Dr. Ben Pearl with FitFoot U. All right, that was awesome, Bill.